Today we're getting ready to install an X3 air conditioner from Nomadic Cooling. It is the 48 volt X3 and it's going to go into my Sprinter right up here. So if we jump up there and take a look, it is it's empty. That's where the air conditioner is going to go. I'll jump up on top and show you that, but we've already finished the inside, but I ran the wires up into there. And I put a little trim ring up in there. That's the only prep I've done. So we're going to cut these holes and start the install. Step one of the process, I have removed the bed so that I don't make a huge mess over my bed. And we've got clean access right here to the ceiling where this is going to go. This is all the goodies from the installation kit. We've got our trim ring for the top, crossbar mounts, foam gaskets, bolts, screws, electronic control panel, a trim ring that came in the kit. I've already got one that I've installed up inside the van. They sent me the DIY kit, which I don't need, but since I have it, I'm going to walk through some of these components so that you can do this on your own as well. It comes with this cardboard template, which is great. This particular one is printed wrong. If you have one like this that's printed wrong, ignore the errors. It says here rear vehicle. This is actually the front of the vehicle. And it says here front of vehicle. This is actually the rear of the vehicle. It fits like this. And I've just cut out so you cut out this inside line. That is where your hole is going to go. This is a 14 by 14 opening. It's actually a little bit off from that, maybe 14 1/4, but that's fine. So this is going to be where your hole sits, and I'm going to set that back to the side, and then your foam gasket is going to go right around there. Now I'm actually just going to use the foam gasket up on the roof to mark my opening. I'll show how to mark that, but you can see this is where the foam gasket's going to go. So you can see that according to the back end of the template, it's got kind of this open area there. That's the same open area that's right here on the back end of the actual unit. And here on the front we have kind of this rubberized coating that's going to open to the exposed area up on the inside. I just brought the cardboard template up onto the roof so that we can kind of lay it in place and just make sure that everything kind of looks like it's going to track before we start cutting holes. I'm going to bring up that foam gasket next and show where that goes, but I'm going to push the foam gasket right up tight where you can see that mark. So it's going to go right up tight to that. This is a 144 Sprinter and it's going into that rear bay. And so my line's going to go right about there. And I've got clearance all the way around. Barely to this bar, but I can move this bar forward a little bit out of the way if I need to. I think it's going to fit just fine there though. Okay, I'm up here on the roof of the van and we're going to set our foam gasket in place. Just loose fit, and I'm going to mark the opening with a Sharpie. So I take my foam gasket and it's going to sit right between these ridges on the side so I don't have to cut. And if you notice, one side is just a little bit longer than the other, maybe 1/8 inch, 1/4 inch. So figure out which side is the shorter side here. They're both going to be pretty close. So there's my shorter side. And then I'm going to slide it forward and bring it right back to this edge that I've marked. I want to go just tight to this where it starts to rise up. This way I have a flat surface all the way around. I don't need to cut it. I don't need to cut the foam to match a ridge. Depending on where you put this in your van, you might have a ridge. Their instruction manual tells you to go ahead and cut the foam gasket around those ridges so that it sits flush to the roof. This particular spot at the rear of the van, I'm not going to need to do that. So it's going to sit right here. It's flat all the way around, so no cutting. I'm just going to mark with a Sharpie all around this inside. That's going to be my hole. Let's get that going. It's been marked, so if I move that out of the way, we're going to go ahead and cut this. I'm going to cut this with a nibbler. So that was awesome. I had it set to camera mode, and when I turned it on, I took a picture. But I ran the nibbler all the way around. First, cut a hole with this large hole saw. Ran the nibbler right there, all the way around. Inside here you can see that little bit of a trim piece that I said. It's just 3/4 inch plywood square that I put together, and that's going to go tight up against the inside to help firm up that edge. All right, just to get a smooth surface all around the top there. Clean up any burrs, rough edges. All right, so now we're going to go through and paint the edge. I like to do it with the roller brush and rattle can Rust-Oleum paint. All right, so we're looking up inside. I've got my wire coming down that I had run. This goes down to my EcoFlow 48 volt 5 kilowatt power system. There's a separate video, I'll put a link to it down below, that you could watch on the EcoFlow power system, but right here you can see my 3/4 inch wood template, just a square 14 by 14 piece that I put up in there, and it's going to go kind of like you can see over here. It's just going to squeeze up tight to the opening so that when we bolt on the piece, it's going to go and hold that top flange nice and tight. Gives a nice firm compression on our foam gasket. All right, so I just finished vacuuming all around up on top, all around inside the gap right up here, so that there's no dirt, debris, dust, filings, sawdust, you name it. It's all nice and clean. And then I took rubbing alcohol and rubbed that all around the surface on the top just to thoroughly clean it. So all this edge right up here on top for about 2 inches back, certainly past this edge here, right, these ridges, all around there, cleaned off with rubbing alcohol. Because we're going to stick that gasket on, we want a nice tight clean seal there. And then we're going to put a sealant around the edge of that gasket. That's what's coming next. All right, so we're going to take off our adhesive and glue it on there. Let's just make sure I got the direction right. One of these directions is a touch narrower. It's right there. All right, so that's my top. We've got 3M 540 polyurethane adhesive sealant, and we're going to put this all the way around to seal that edge. Okay, installation time. We're just going to set it over the hole. I had a buddy help me lift it up here onto the roof. The first thing we're going to do is install this strip, which is going to sit right back here towards the back to help support the back end. So we're going to turn this the proper direction forward. I've got a little bit of rubbing alcohol on a wipe that we're going to use. Okay, down inside and just looking at how we set this in here. So there's our foam right here. Here's our edge, metal edge, and we just laid this on top of that foam, kind of right over the opening. But from here, I can just push up with my hand and kind of adjust it a little bit one way, a little bit to the other way. So I can kind of just, from down here, I can kind of pick it up a little and shift it to where it's centered perfectly on my hole. And then we're going to start getting ready to bolt it all together. All right, the next thing I'm going to do is get our bolts ready to go through our crossbars. So these crossbars are going to be what cinches it up from down below. They're going to go through here, but we need the bolts on to be able to crank it up in there. So the first thing we put on, we're going to open up our little packaging, and we're going to put on a little bolt. Bolt goes on first, then We're going to spin that kind of down near the very bottom. It's more than we're going to need, but spin that all the way down. Okay, with the flat face. See that face with the grooves on there? Grab another one. It's got a face with these grooves. So those grooves are going to be facing up with the nut part facing to the back. Then we're going to put in a lock washer and a flat washer. So that's what it's going to look like. Nut, lock washer, flat washer, and then that is going to go through here up into the unit. So this is going to screw into the bottom of the unit right here. We're going to crank these down hand tight plus a quarter turn. Then we're going to crank down on those bolts to 5 Newton meters. We're going to get all 4 of these bolts ready to go. This is the first step. Get this guy set. Okay, now we're going to put our crossbars in. Notice on these 2 crossbars there's a set with wide holes and a set with narrower holes, and they correspond to wide holes and narrower holes. If you got the kit, you're going to have a trim piece like this in your kit, and that trim piece is going to go, so you probably don't have ceiling on yet, which would be a good thing. You're going to put this flat edge up against the flat edge of your roof, and you're going to put it with the kind of these angled sides to the front and the back. That way these crossbars can push up tight against that, and it's going to sort of pinch and squish between that that ceiling piece. Ultimately, we're just trying to compress that foam gasket. Now, I've already had the ceiling in here, and I'm not. This isn't going to fit through a 14-inch opening, so I've already built that wood piece that we saw and put it in before I put in the ceiling because I knew this was going to be here. And now I've got my. So we're going to push that up, my little trim piece, up against the top, and line this up roughly. We'll adjust it a little bit more in a sec. Just like that. We'll take our little bolts that we pre-put together and just put a few turns in there to keep the bolt in. All right. So we're going to hand tighten these 4 bolts into the air conditioner itself. These are hand tight, so I just turn that by hand until they touch, till they don't turn anymore. Okay, just right there. Obviously they're not tight here. The bracket's still loose. We're going to turn these more, 1/4 of a turn with a wrench. Only a 1/4 of a turn past hand tight. If you over tighten those into the unit, you're going to break the unit. It's not covered by warranty, so be careful with this part. Let's get the other 2 in there. Okay, we've got an H6, hex 6, and we're going to go 1/4 turn on these guys. So get it in there, set it up, just 1/4 turn that. Quarter turn that. So that just snugs those bolts into the unit. Now we're going to use a 13mm deep socket. And thankfully that goes over the top of those. We're just going to spin those up, snug to start, so that we can get everything kind of adjusted right where we want it. So I'm going to take a cutoff wheel and I'm going to cut off the heads on these 4. That way I can get my socket on there to go right up to 5 Newton meters. Okay, I cut about 3/4 of an inch off of each one, and that's going to allow my deep socket wrench to get all the way on there. I've set it to 5 newtons, 5 newton meters, and we're going to go not all the way on that. We're going to kind of go back and forth and just cinch this down. It's just going to help kind of compress it evenly. Click. All right. It is now secured. Double check that your bolts are above the roof. So we're going to put our panel, if they're too low, you might still need that grinder cutoff wheel to cut those off, but these are all a little bit above, which is what we want. We're going to get our electrical set up next so that I can plug it in. All right, so where we're at with this, I've got the connection plugged in on both ends. On this end, had to get this wired in, cut off what was there, and wired in one end of the connection. This is the wiring that came from the vehicle, which from the house battery, which I had to put a splice in there to splice those together, because this was already hardwired to that end, so I couldn't just run my wires into this end. But we now have the main power plugged in. We've got the control panel end plugged in here. You want to plug that in before turning on the unit to avoid any fuses or getting blown. But we're ready to test it. If we turned it on for just a moment, which I did, when we look up into here, make sure that these spin easily and the air's coming out this side. With these 2 fans right there, air comes out right here. The air goes in this side right up over here. That's your air in, air out. And so the air out comes at the front. Front of the vehicle is the air out. Back of the vehicle, it goes in. If we look at our plate, our cover plate, so the air out comes through these direction nozzles that you can pop open and aim, right? And the air is going to go in through those vent holes. So the next piece, as you can see, I started here, there is a foam separator. What you want to do is separate the air in from the air out. When that air force comes out, you don't want it to just go right back up into the unit. You want it to come out. So there's a separator that goes here, and that separator gets it's got an adhesive on one end, and so it just gets adhesive down onto here. Now I cut it first. Take this separator, hold it up in your opening, and mark exactly how wide it is. So I cut my separator down to the exact width and dry fitted it so it fits right up in there. And then the separator sits on here and gets sort of glued onto that with that adhesive strip. The one thing I'll mention here is that this, where this needs to sit on here, as you can see, to separate that cold air coming through these vents, this in your opening in no way lines up with where it needs to sit right here, which is along this edge. Unfortunately, those are off by 1.5 to 2 inches. So, but what we're going to do is just bend this down when we install it so that it sits up there at an angle. It's going to get installed something like that and pushed up against the top. I did not cut the depth of it to be flush with the inside because I need this bend. I need the extra material to bend over and actually touch right up in here where it needs to be. I guess in a future install, I would not center the air conditioner over the opening. I would try to make it sit another 1 to 1.5 inches more forward so that this is going to more accurately line up with where it has to sit on that. Last thing I'm going to do before kind of finishing off and installing that faceplate that goes on here, As I mentioned, there's that separator that separates the forced air coming out here with the air going back up in. That does less good when you've got this gap all the way around in the ceiling. That forced air is just going to go right around the separator and go right back up inside. So we actually need to tuck in a bunch of insulation all around in here so that the only way that the air can go is down through here and not back around to the back side of the opening here. So we're going to insulate some more. We're going to put a little bit of duct tape here on each side, just as an additional kind of a barrier right there. What we got there is some duct tape. So I mentioned this divider is going to go right here and kind of bend, arc over, because it touches down here. So we're going to bend that, but this is covered with some duct tape to seal that, and it's insulated all around. So for the air to get around, it's going to have to go through all that insulation, which is really going to hold it in place. And same thing over here, some duct tape just to help protect that edge where that's going to sit, and insulation tucked all around the back. So now we should be able to install our trim cover. One thing to pay close attention to here, there is wiring. The right wiring is coming out here, and wiring that's tucked up under the roof. Know where your wiring is and make sure that the screws that you put in don't go through the wood and poke into the wiring. So be careful of creating a short circuit. I have a 1/2 inch thick ceiling right in this area, and so I'm going to use my own 1/2 inch thick screws that I know will not penetrate through towards where the wiring is, especially in the back, because my wires are right up in here. So know where your wiring is and know what screws you're going to use. The ones they provide in the package are a bit long for what I'm going to want to do right here, and so I'm going to use my 1/2 inch screws. You can connect that up. That just pops right in there. I think facing forward is good. You can make this face whichever direction you like, so I'm going to make it face forward. There we go. Okay, so that's just clipped in. Set this up in place here. Oh, and we're going to bend our foam down. Get a nice bend in the foam. Maybe you can see it there. To get back where it needs to be. Okay. Look at me talking with stuff in my mouth. And slide it right up in. Right about there. Hard to see where that goes. There we go. Okay. Here we go. All right. How she look? I like it. Should be able to put all the rest of the screws in, but let's just turn it on and verify we get some. Open that up, get some air. Turn it on. Put some more screws in. So there's our unit. We've got a control panel on there. I think I just turned it off. There we go. 762. We've got our directional plates down over here, pointing towards the front. Rotate around. Very good. AC.